And we are now officially recording. Director White, you're on.
All right, good morning, everyone. And let me just say that I'm excited to be here. Tony has spent a lot of time bringing me up to speed since I've been on the job on this forum, how excited he is. I think it has come up literally every week in our executive team meetings, and his passion and interest in this is second to none. He got me excited about it and told me about this forum. And I truly wanted to be here because I certainly believe that if we're going to move forward, not only in this city and this state, but in this country, this is the platform that's needed. We need to hear from our young people. We need to hear from our future leaders, and we need to partner with them and listen to some of their great ideas. I have a 26-year-old daughter who often reminds me that I am not as in tune as I think I am. So she and I have really enjoyed the conversation back and forth over the past year and a half. A little bit about me. I'm about 9 weeks into this new job. I am a retired assistant chief with the Detroit Police Department. And a lot of people look at that transition from law enforcement to civil rights and ask, you know, are you the right person, or why are you the right person as it relates to civil rights? Well, you know, certainly working in law enforcement for over 25 years, I've had an opportunity to see some of the good and some of the bad in law enforcement. And nothing has disappointed me more than some of the things that I've seen around this country as it relates to the treatment of people in general, but certainly the people of color. Being an African-American male myself, growing up in the city of Detroit, I've had an opportunity to not only interact on both sides as a citizen and as a law enforcement officer, and I know that much work needs to be done. I'm passionate about civil rights. I've had some individualized incidents that has driven that passion. And certainly when you wear a blue uniform, you wear it with privilege that it comes with that uniform. However, it does not take away from some of the civil rights issues and issues of equity and issues of inclusion in this country because you are in a blue uniform. So really, I won't want to take up a whole lot of time. I'll talk a little bit about my background in education. I am a graduate of, and I always say this and people chuckle at me, but I think it's important. I'm a graduate of Wayne County Community College. And a lot of people laugh at that, but let me tell you something. Wayne County Community College set my education career on the right path. And you know, having to grow up in the circumstance that I grew up in, going away to college wasn't in my family dynamic. My mother was a single parent, and so I had to work and go to school. But then upon graduation, I went to Wayne State University and did my undergrad work in sociology and a minor in psychology. I did my graduate work at Central Michigan University in mental health and counseling. I am a licensed mental health counselor. And then I returned to Wayne State University completing an MBA certificate in the Mike Ilitch School of Business. So, but that path, that track was set off by Wayne County Community College. And I am unapologetically a proud graduate of a community college, which set my path in higher education. And I'm very proud of that. And again, I'm just very happy to be here, and I don't want to take up too much time. I've talked now for about 3 minutes. So is there any questions for me before I turn it back over to Tony? All right, well, very good. And Tony, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Director White. And we are definitely happy to have you, and looking forward to, our work together. So now, what I have now, I wanted to take the opportunity. I know we have, I believe I saw Senator Chang step in, and I wanted to ensure that we acknowledge all of our, senators and representatives who have participated here. So Senator Chang, did you want to say a few words? I know I'll put you on the spot, sorry.
Okay, no, not a problem. It's great to see you, and it's okay. And so you want to say hi too. Just excited to hear from our young people about all the great ideas that you have. Obviously, we are in a moment in our country where getting as much input from those who are going to be leading our country in the future is really important, especially on issues of racial justice. And so some of you may know that much of my career has been focused on social justice issues, and as a legislator, very much focused on lifting up our values of equity and justice every chance that I can. So it's great to see some friendly faces and familiar faces on here, and just really looking forward to hearing all of your ideas and seeing how I can be an ally. So thank you.
All right, well, Senator Chang, thank you very much. Do we have, trying to monitor now it's growing so, and our attendees are growing so fast, I want to ensure that we acknowledge and recognize our senators and representatives. Do we have other senators or representatives who are representing our senators or representatives' offices here? Like I said, you have to excuse me as I'm trying to go through. All right, well, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Chang. And then now I get a chance to turn this over to one of our architects.
Hello, you talking so fast for me. This is Marie Overall for State Representative Tyrone Carter. Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Yeah, I tend to do that. You have to excuse me. So, but welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now I get to turn this over to the architect and a gentleman I've had the pleasure of working with in many of our youth programming for many years from University of Michigan, Barry Checkerman.
Hey, hi everybody, and thanks Tony for being our key partner in this. It's been a great experience. I wanted to again thank Tony and the Civil Rights Commission for helping to co-facilitate this. This is just the first of a number of other activities that we have in mind. We couldn't have done this without Lindsay Matson and Avi Kumar, who've been our community organizers in working with our fellows. And then our social justice fellows, who you'll be meeting, who they are a group of high school students from metropolitan Detroit, all across Metro Detroit. And they have been organizing for civil rights and social justice projects for some of them over the last few years. They all were part of our our youth dialogues on race and ethnicity in metropolitan Detroit, a program that some of you know because you are our community partners. We couldn't be doing this without you. And all of the fellows met in the dialogue program, and they come with training in intergroup dialogue and with civil rights leadership. Just to mention, this is not our only project. We expect that we'll be doing something with teachers and administrators in January, and then perhaps if we're able to, we'll do some kind of a student or youth summit in February. So we invite you to participate in all of that, and thank you so much for being part of the meeting. I look forward to meeting all of you. Suniti, I'm going to turn it over to you. Suniti is one of our youth fellows, and you are going to be our facilitator for the meeting. And all I would say is these are our allies. They are friendly people, and they're all looking forward to this. So no pressure. Go ahead, Suniti.
All right. Hi, my name is Suniti Majolkar, and I'm a senior at the Nova High School, and my pronouns are she or hers. I want to thank Barry and Tony again for helping us start out and connecting us with the decision makers today. And of course, Avi Kumar, Matt Homrich-Nealing, and Lindsay Matson, our closest adult allies that have supported us in organizing. So welcome to Increasing Equity in Education, a Youth Perspective. And we gather today as a part of a youth-led statewide forum organized by the Social Justice Fellows in partnership with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And I really want to make it clear today that our purpose is to reach goals and commitments to work towards educational justice in Michigan. So Today, I'll be a facilitator for our large group activities, and I'm hoping that I can help you all connect with our presenters, especially during their presentations. So through my student voice and agency work at Novi, I have participated in and facilitated many dialogues to help work towards our district goal of educational justice. But also as part of the Social Justice Fellows, I have been able to facilitate conversations between youth and adults and organize a lot of events to help bridge the gap we can often see between community involvement and youth involvement over the past couple of years. So the members here today of the Social Justice Fellows are Alicia Dean Weathersby from Walled Lake Central, Jordan Solomon from Grosse Pointe North, Ellie Vasquez from Cass Tech, Neelia Mistry from the University of Michigan, Atishay Kumar from Farmington High School, Andrea Hire from Dearborn High School, Anaya Stokes from Princeton University, and Sergio Guerra from Cesar Chavez. And as a group, we've worked with a variety of different organizations around Detroit to develop develop workshops to combat issues that we know affect youth adversely. And this year, we had created a set of demands in hopes to diversify our school's English and health curricula, but due to the coronavirus, we were sent home in the midst of our organization and never really got the chance to follow up. However, we kept our momentum going by running a week-long social media campaign on our Instagram page to advocate for more inclusive curricula in our schools. Over the summer, many of us have also engaged in a community-based internship. And for our capstone project, we created research-based video modules centering our experiences as youth with inequalities, prejudice, and discrimination. We examined a variety of topics, including the lack of mental health support for students, underfunding education, the school to prison pipeline, intergroup dialogue education, inclusive curricula, and what I'm really excited about to elaborate on with you all today is authentic youth power in decision-making. So I think that nowadays we too often hear about the notion of youth voice without an actual follow-up of youth power. And I think that there's a really distinct difference here that we need to acknowledge. Actual youth power means that youth have power and can affect power in their spaces. They could and should be involved in every step of the creation and implementation of any processes that affect them. Simply, this could look like students being included when making classroom rules. But thinking bigger, it could even look like students as voting members of school boards and legislative bodies. Overall, it means youth can oppose or support decisions, and their opinion is given the same weight as an adult's in the same space. As of now, youth go through about 18 years of their life without actually getting to influence the systems that they live in. But suddenly when they become adults, they get the power to vote and the right to participate in their society. They're given a lot of power, which honestly, I think that they haven't been given a lot of preparation to have. And adults have a lot of power over youth. And we can see this in education, politics, government, and a lot more. But to achieve authentic youth power in decision-making, compromise and the willingness from adults to share power is required. And that's what I'm really here for today. Soon we'll be hearing the youth perspective on educational equity in Michigan. And this is an amazing integral step towards change. But as you listen, I challenge you to ponder the methods through which youth can and should hold power in your community. Likewise, my peers will also be sharing their insights and solutions on how to improve our education. How can we, as youth, continue to be involved in this process beyond our forum today? In this pandemic, many students have been confined to computer screens with little say in their education. Many youth are stuck without adequate mental health support, as the ratio of counselors and social workers to students in Michigan has startlingly dwindled. We see our nations in the depths of divisions through unjust police brutality cases and even evidenced by our recent election. But we as youth are not given the power to actually change anything. It's really frustrating and I want it to change. I acknowledge the privilege that I have to even be sharing this issue with you today. And I know that so many people are being left out of this conversation. So we have to keep equity and in the forefront of our minds and equity in the forefront of our activism as we think about integrating youth power. Our diverse populations must be represented accurately. We're the future of this country, like Director White said, and we are not being given the true power to affect it. I hope that the decision makers we have with us today can not only understand my frustration and the frustration of fellow youth, but actually take actionable steps to share their power with youth. Okay. Can we get the agenda up, please, Abby? Yeah, thank you. All right, I wanted to go over our agenda before we started. Our plan today is that for the first half of this forum, we'll have presentations from the social justice fellows surrounding the 3 topics you see on your screen. And after each presentation, we'll also have a couple of minutes for audience questions. And the second half will consist of breakouts in which decision makers will be able to engage in discussion with our presenters. All right, and slide please. Before our presentation begins, I'd also like to establish some ground rules. Number 1, respect. Number 2, having 1 speaker at a time so everyone is able to share their ideas. So remember to stay on mute when you aren't speaking. Number 3, let's approach this forum with an open mind to the ideas and changes we may promote today. Number 4, our purpose, like I said before, is to set goals. So we will. And let's keep each other accountable and hopefully take the ideas we discuss to reality. Number 5, as a courtesy, please say your name before you speak. And I think most importantly, today youth are facilitators, advocates, and experts. Please respect our role in organizing and leading this forum. We're trained and we've worked really hard to formulate an informed presentation to push for educational equity in Michigan. So these rules apply for the duration of our forum and to make sure we can all have a productive, respectful experience. Any questions before we start? Okay, since we'll be streaming live to Facebook and Instagram, we will need to have everyone but our presenters and interpreter turn off their cameras during the presentations, please. And remember, we will have a talk back at the end of each presentation, so make sure to put your questions in the chat and we'll come back to them later. All right, Michigan schools are struggling, ranking dead last among all 50 states in revenue growth for schools since adopting Proposal A. Our funding structure has resulted in under-resourced schools, putting all Michigan students at a disadvantage. Our first presentation will go through exactly why we need to fix our school funding system and how it doesn't have to be like this anymore. We believe we need a graduated income tax with a weighted funding system in Michigan. Please welcome Alicia and Jordan with school funding. Slide, please.
Hi, everyone. First off, I'm glad that everyone could make it. My name is Jordan Solomon. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at Grosse Pointe North High School.
I'm Alicia Dean Weathersby. I'm a senior at Walled Lake Central High School, and I also use she, her pronouns.
Okay, Albie. So starting off, again, my name is Jordan Solomon, and I'm a senior at Grosse Pointe North High School. Prior to my transfer to Grosse Pointe Schools, I began my 9th grade at Renaissance High School in the Detroit Public School District. During my time at DPS, I quickly observed that the district seemed to lack basic necessities for an exceptional education, including updated textbooks, access to printers, and sometimes even teachers in the classroom. On top of all that, a lot of my teachers often seemed unmotivated, as they were overbeared with broad responsibilities without adequate compensation. When I traveled to other schools within the district, I was shocked to see that the strains I experienced at Renaissance were almost privileged, as those struggles were nowhere near as severe as conditions prevalent in other schools within the district, who are rattled with falling ceiling tiles, broken floors, and numerous health hazards on top of educational barriers. Schools were quite literally falling apart, and this is an unacceptable environment for the livelihood of students who are preparing for their future. My time at DPS eventually led me to transfer to its bordering district, the affluent and well-known Grosse Pointe Public School System. This new school was much different. Instantly, I saw that my educational demands were now being fulfilled, and many of the educational tools and opportunities lacking at DPS were somehow more than available at its neighboring district. I also think it's important to note the racial differences between the two bordering areas, as Grosse Pointe is 94% white compared to Detroit, which is about 80% Black. Being fairly familiar with both areas, I can't help but wonder how things might be different for DPS if those demographics were switched. All in all, I feel strongly that it is an injustice to have a student's area code, something that they cannot control, be one of the main factors contributing to their educational disadvantage. I believe that many Michigan students have been deprived for far too long, and schools must be funded equitably for all students of different backgrounds to have an equal chance at future success. Okay, Elby.
The experiences shared by Jordan and countless other Michigan students are the results of changing educational policies in Michigan. Take a look at the two pie charts on the left. Prior to 1994, schools were largely funded by local tax revenue, putting lower income students at a disadvantage in terms of education. Upon the introduction of Proposal A, school funding became more state-based and cut local contributions. It made funding equal, not equitable, still disadvantaging lower income students.
Okay. The graph on the left shows what percentage of our total state income. That means if you added the income of all residents, that goes to state and local taxes. That green line is Michigan. The black line is the national average. You can see that Michigan is about $6.8 billion below the average. The chart on the right shows the overall percentage of the income that Michiganders pay in state taxes today. Each bar represents a segment of the population based on income, starting with the lowest income group and going up to the richest. What you can see is that those of us at the bottom, the poor, working, and middle-class families, pay a higher overall percentage of our income taxes than wealthy Michiganders. Though the intentions of Proposal A were to increase school funding, we know that this has not been the case. While Proposal A made funding largely state-based, state tax revenue has decreased tremendously over the past decades. This has resulted in a general fund budget for Michigan decreasing by 35% since 2000, accounting for inflation. Independent research has even shown that Michigan schools are currently underfunded by at least $3.7 billion. This will only worsen the economic impact of COVID-19.
As you can see from these graphs, you can go back, sorry. As you can see from these graphs, Michigan's tax revenue is following a declining trend, with much of the tax burden falling on the working and middle class. Not only does this tax structure hurt our schools, but it also hurts lower income taxpayers in Michigan. We think it's time for wealthy Michiganders to pay their fair share and support our public schools.
Okay, Elby. So what does all this lead to? Made clear over the past few months, COVID showed the vulnerability of Proposal A due to its reliability on state tax revenue. Working and middle-class families were economically hit the hardest by this crisis, and our schools' revenue will decline significantly because of this. However, the wealthiest in Michigan have been getting richer during the pandemic. If they were paying their fair share in taxes, then our public institutions, like schools, wouldn't be hurt so badly. When situations like COVID-19 happen, the tax burden falls on those most impacted as opposed to the wealthy. The result of all this are school closures, increased accountability for schools who are expected to do more with less, and declining literacy skills, which puts students at a disadvantage for their future. Okay, Elby.
With all that we have learned, two main solutions could potentially refund our schools. We need a fair tax system that generates more tax revenue without hurting the working and middle class. For example, a graduated tax income would make it so that wealthy Michiganders contribute their fair share of taxes, which will also ease some of the tax burden on lower income citizens. As you can see from the new tax structure chart, if we just equalize the overall tax rate so that everyone paid their fair share, we could raise over $1 billion a year that could go to our public schools. Okay.
Secondly, a need-based weighted funding formula would make more funding available for schools that need it the most, while also maintaining a healthy budget for all Michigan schools, regardless of their current educational standing. The formula proposed, courtesy of Michigan School Finance Research Collaborative, showcases what equitable funding in Michigan would look like. As you can see by the table, the formula takes into account a base cost and provides extra funding for things such as special education, poverty, and career and technological education. With this funding formula, previously disadvantaged schools will finally be provided the opportunity to offer their students the quality education that they deserve.
Now is the time to start funding our future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jordan and Alicia. Now we're going to have some time for questions from our audience or decision makers. If you guys have any, feel free to unmute your mic and ask, or turn on your camera and ask, or use the chat feature as well. Yes. Okay. Well, we have one question. How do you think your solutions that you proposed will impact students as opposed to proposal A?
Well, the new solution would offer students who have bigger needs for education, it would give them the opportunity to get equitable funding. So while Proposal A can give Michigan schools equal funding, the equal funding is not enough for schools that need it more. Schools like DPS that I mentioned earlier.
All right, we have one final question before we can move. I think we can take one more question, and then we will have to move on, and you can definitely ask during the breakouts as well. Do you provide any level of local/control funding, local control/funding on local taxpayer basis?
I'm not quite sure of that, if that's referring to the weighted funding formula. Sorry, 1 second. Trying to look at the picture. If the question was local funding?
Yeah, if you need a couple minutes, we can definitely come back to this in the breakouts, and we can move on to our next presentation for now.
Yep, that will work.
All right, our next presentation discusses how we should address the issue of ensuring safety for all students. Unfortunately, the presence of police has often been a harmful, expensive, and underperforming addition to our educational communities. Police in schools can negatively redefine the way administrators resolve conflicts and increase incarceration rates for Black and Brown students. Simply putting police in schools fails to address the issue of keeping our students safe. Instead of spending funds on police, we believe schools should reallocate those funds to counselors, social workers, and anti-racist curricula. Our next group will be talking about racial disparities in school policing and punishment, how we'd like to see funds divested from police and invested into programs that support student safety and well-being, and the importance of implementing restorative practices. Please welcome Ellie, Ati, and Nile, and please remember to turn your cameras off during their presentation, and especially if you have questions, put them in the chat maybe prior to when I ask. Thank you. Welcome, Ellie, Ati, and Nile.
Good morning. My name is Ellie Vasquez. My pronouns are she, hers.
My name is Adishay Kumar. My pronouns are he, him, his.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nilay Mistry. My pronouns are he, him, his.
All right, Abby, next slide, please. All right, so growing up, I attended predominantly Black and low-income schools. By doing so, I was able to see over-policing firsthand. When I left my middle school and met people from different schools, they told me that they didn't have metal detectors like I did. I used to think that it was only my school with bad experiences involving police, yet I came to realize that it wasn't. I had heard horrible stories of kids getting thrown by police officers 3 times their age, and even going as far as getting tackled for something as simple as a bag of chips. And in general, just a lack of de-escalation skills. I just don't think that it's fair for students to feel unsafe in their own schools and for all this funding to go into things that have brought more trauma than good. This illustration shown on the slide was done by Jesus Orozco. It represents how certain schools' environments make students feel like criminals. Next slide, please. Here are some facts about police. Police are overrepresented in communities of color, included in their schools. Schools could spend money on things that keep kids safe and people who are trained in de-escalation tactics like counselors, nurses, and social workers. Spending money on police shows investment in punishment instead of safety. Police assigned to school buildings often don't receive training on adolescent development, racial equity, restorative justice, or strategies for de-escalation, leaving many unequipped to do their jobs without causing harm to students. In 2016, Black students accounted for 15% of student body nationwide, 31% of arrests. My peers in Detroit schools don't feel safe. They have been manhandled, harassed, and intimidated by authorities more than twice their age. Schools with police make immigrant students and their parents feel unsafe because simple misbehavior can lead to deportation. This makes them less invested in school.
Thank you, Ellie. So why is there such a disparity in the way that students are disciplined within our schools? One of the first main reasons is due to systemic racism and systemic oppression. We need to address the structures which uphold these discriminatory systems, which are so harmful for people who belong to any marginalized community. We also need to address interpersonal biases. People who interact with students on a daily basis should be trained to acknowledge and work on their biases in order to create a safe space for students, one of the most important things that we cannot stress more. In order to fully fix this problem, we need to address systemic racism and remove police from schools completely. However, there are some reforms that can lead to better outcomes for students of color in our schools. We want to formalize the introduction of restorative practices within our Michigan schools. One of the most powerful introductions to reformative practices includes Public Act 361 of 2016, which was then implemented in 2017. This act introduced and encourages restorative justice practices as disciplinary measures within interpersonal conflicts and other non-threatening behaviors versus the traditional methods of suspension and expulsion. These restorative justice practices focus on healing conflicts and behaviors as opposed to just punishing them and teaching students what's right. It's promoting a cultural shift in our school climate, and with this act, zero tolerance policies are slowly becoming eliminated.
Thanks, Neely. So what can educators and school staff do now to decrease harm caused by school police? Next, please. Well, first, we can advocate for our students. Students, parents, teachers, and administrators and community members can advocate for laws and policies which defund police, mandate restorative practices, and increase equity for all students. We can also address implicit bias. Implicit bias results from the tendency to process information based on unconscious associations and feelings. Oftentimes, people act on these unconscious associations, causing harm on someone based on stereotypes. Next, please. So how do these biases impact students? Well, Black students are suspended and expelled 3 times more than their white peers. Additionally, Black and Brown students are more likely to be involved with police at school. These disparities can contribute to the school-to-prison pipeline instead of helping students prepare for life and further education. So what can be done to combat this? Well, we can hold mandatory trainings for staff where they learn to acknowledge their own biases, stop their biases in their tracks when they notice them, and finally change their biased way of thinking. In the chat, we're going to drop a link, which is a great resource to start this bias training.
So how do we make a change? Our number one goal is to see police completely out of schools, including fully disbanding DPSCD police. In the meantime, as steps forward towards this process, we're asking that schools like DPSCD who have police departments to cut funds to the police by at least 50% by the 21-22 school year. Invest the money into counselors, social workers, and anti-racist curricula. Ensure all educators and school staff are fully trained in anti-bias work and restorative practices, and that there is a plan for implementing these practices instead of making more punitive measures.
All right. Thank you so much, Ellie and Neela and Uthi for that presentation. As with our last presentation, we'll have some time for questions. I think we have time for one. So if you would like to ask a question, just unmute your mic or put it in the chat and I can relay it to our presenters. Okay. If we don't have any questions from this group, we can move on to our last presentation. Our last presentation today goes back to what our core focus was earlier this year as the Social Justice Fellows, taking steps to diversify school curricula. This year, we spoke to our teachers and also conducted research on what exactly Michigan's current curricula allows for in our schools. We had prepared a summit for decision makers to eliminate the flaws that we see in our curricula and offer solutions. Although this was canceled because of the coronavirus, we didn't give up there and instead ran a social media campaign. We reached about 1,400 followers on our Instagram and even more in our partnership with 482 Forward. I'd like to introduce our next group that will be further exploring our ideas to diversify Michigan curricula. Our ask is that you leverage your power as legislators, educators, and youth advocates to implement diverse, inclusive curricula through the active incorporation of youth voice and intergroup dialogue education. Please welcome Sergio, Andrea, and Anaya.
Next slide, please, Avi. Hello, good morning. My name is Sergio Guerra. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am a senior at Cesar Chavez Academy High School in Southwest Detroit.
Hi, my name is Andrea Aguirre. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at Dearborn High School.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anaya Stokes. I use she, her pronouns. I am a first year at Princeton University and a graduate of Harrison Farmington High School in Farmington, Michigan.
Going to a couple current events quickly. The current administration has talked a lot about curriculum this year, more than the past 3 years. While the election is still being confirmed, the idea of a patriotic education, one of which the Trump administration is suggesting, is scary. 45's idea on a patriotic education would void any history that doesn't include white people.
Jill Lepore, in her book, This America, examines the sources of bias that have formed the United States education system. Specifically, the influence white nationalism has had in creating what she calls mythical narratives that are not reflective of the nation's core. She ultimately makes a case to unify the nation, arguing that patriotism, rooted in love for the ideals of this country, versus nationalism, rooted in the hate for foreign, heterogeneous societies, should prevail. This, she argues, would require an immense revision of history as we know it, so that it reflects a nation in which anyone who affirms its civic ideals belongs.
So this would then lead into our thesis that a patriotic education should reflect every student's identity. Our current curricula underperforms when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and it's time to change that. Here are some proposals that we have that we believe should be included in the 4 different subject areas of history, art, language arts, and health. These changes would then provide a more accurate representation of an inclusive 21st century classroom.
The first class that we're going to be talking about is history. History classes today are incredibly Eurocentric, and it doesn't satisfy the narratives of people of color. You cannot call world history if you only focus on Europe. Lessons on Black history, LGBTQ+ history, and other histories that isn't white shouldn't just be confined to only 1 month or 1 chapter of a whole unit. Though the European narrative is valuable, it's not the only valuable one. We are, however, taught this implicitly since our history curriculums do not place equal important emphasis on discovering the cultures of the indigenous peoples whose lives were upheaven by European imperialism and colonialism. History curriculum needs to reflect all cultures and groups of people without making it an optional class for students.
Next slide. The next class we'll be discussing are English classes. English classes today do not comprehensively include literature from diverse authors. As a graduate of the Michigan public school system, I've reflected upon my educational experiences in Farmington, an incredibly diverse district of Michigan. Even here, though, English curriculum is typically confined to one token narrative of color, specifically African-American narratives, and it fails by solely purporting the white heteronormative narrative. Curriculum for English courses should include works from authors of various races, ethnicities, socioeconomic statuses, sexual orientations, and cultures. Further, texts reflecting the multicultural demographics should be required so that all students are effectively educated and prepared to enter today's society. Next slide, please. To do this, teachers and their respective district administration would need to approve new works to achieve various English curricular goals and create a new norm for respected literature to extend past classics and to include plays by Latinx authors, narratives of indigenous peoples, poetry comparing Hindu and Buddhist ways of life, prompts concerning the livelihood of LGBTQ+ individuals in the workplace, etc.
The next subject we will be focusing on is art. It should incorporate artists and themes to connect with students from a variety of marginalized groups. So my experience in the current curriculum, teachers would provide projects and themes for students that revolved around a European Renaissance viewpoint. While art pieces from Europe have influenced various countries and their compositions, we shouldn't forget about the roots and rich art histories that these places had beforehand. Art especially should be more diverse and open to different backgrounds and levels and should enable students to see themselves in their own works. Next slide. In order to do this, teachers could ask themselves these type of questions when coming up with lesson plans, such as which groups are being represented? Is there a mixture of male and female representation? There's a variety of ethnic and racial groups. Are there any artists with physical or cognitive or special needs that should also be included? Diversity doesn't always have to do with ethnicity and culture. It can include ELL students, LGBTQ+ students, students of color, students with physical special needs, students with cognitive special needs, and students of low socioeconomic status.
The final class that we're going to be discussing is health class. Health class today only represents the heteronormative standards in our society and completely overlooks the importance of one's mental health. First, the exclusion of LGBTQ+ health. The curriculum of health only seems to fit the societal standard of a male and female relationship, and the idea of sexual orientation is sometimes overlooked or not even acknowledged. For mental health, there is a priority over physical health like diet and exercise, but our mental health is also very important. Students should know how to prevent burnout and the dangerous effects of a poor mental health. Health curriculum needs to include the important standards of LGBTQ+ health and have lesson plans to focus on the importance of mental health and the possible outcomes if not handled well.
Though the educational system that exists may have previously provided a representative curriculum, the ever-changing demographics of American society have left the system with an inadequate promulgation of all the cultures, perspectives, and life experiences that compose the United States today. Following our presentation, our demands are as following. We demand that state school curricula substantially include perspectives of underrepresented social identities to include diverse races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, socioeconomic statuses, etc. We demand that youth's perspectives are actively solicited and included in the development and implementation of curriculum at the state and local levels. Finally, we demand that teachers and even students are trained in intergroup dialogue education in order to proactively create a safe, conducive space for students to engage with diverse materials and perspectives. We implore you to consider practical solutions to attain these ends that can be developed both later in this event and after in your personal work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrea and Sergio and Anaya. for expanding on our work this year. It's really great to hear what we have been working hard on. And now we'll have our last final couple minutes for any comments or questions. And I see a lot in the chat. Dr. Weber saying that we need to mandate a statewide health curriculum, and that includes all of what we demand and focus on inclusive play. And I think, Peggy also is asking, personal curriculums have allowed for state mandated health courses to be an opt-out item. What is the student panel's position on this? What do you guys think about this opt-out health courses?
I personally, though I regret it a little bit, kind of fell into that in high school. I tested out of health to try and attain a personal curriculum and to graduate with it. However, upon retrospection and just trying to reflect on the things that I don't have very much experience with, especially when meeting with this particular group over the past year to try and build on what health curriculum could be, I found that there was so much that I didn't have any experience on. And to be frank, I think it absolutely is necessary for students to engage in that program, and that the personal curriculum program as it is probably needs some revision so that students who do try and opt out or test out of health have to legitimately engage in the curriculum in some way, more than going and, just trying to pass the test. But Sergio and Andrea, if they have any comments as well.
So I am in the same boat as Anaya. I also tested out of the health curriculum, and that was my sophomore year, and I joined the group in my junior year, and just hearing the different stories that everybody had from different districts and how I had to miss out on that, it sort of opened my eyes to the idea that even the test out wasn't very inclusive of different backgrounds of students. And so just seeing that also made me realize the importance of this class and how students can relate to this class as well, because they can learn a lot of things.
And to add on, I don't think I'm in the exact same boat as Anaya and Andrea, but my school does have us take health class to graduate. But of course, this year has thrown everything out of rotation, and I'm currently taking health online through a different platform. And that platform doesn't seem to include all the perspectives and narratives that it should. So there does need to be a standard, and it's kind of testing out at this point. There needs to be more information if you opt to test out, because you're not getting the same level of quality education that you should actually be receiving.
Yeah, that's true. I think we all know that the health curricula has been not inclusive for a long time, and I love that we are touching on that right here. Okay, I know I'm seeing a couple more questions, but I think we need to transition right now. So we can definitely go into these more in our breakout rooms, which will be the second half of our forum today. So this concludes the public portion of our forum, Increasing Equity in Education, a Youth Perspective. So we went over a lot of ideas today, so let's recap. We want a weighted funding system using graduated income tax for our schools in Michigan. We must understand the significance of restorative practices and reallocate funds often spent on police to counselors, social workers, and anti-racist curricula. And finally, we ask that you use your power to implement diverse, inclusive curricula through the incorporation of youth voice and intergroup dialogue education. And remember, youth need to be given decision-making power if we truly want to reach equitable education in Michigan. I'd like to thank everyone in our audience for their questions, and we will definitely get back to some of them, and commitment to youth power and educational equity. If you are an adult or a youth watching us live on Instagram or Facebook, and you too would like to take action, feel free to screenshot the contact information that you see on your screen. Interested youth can email barrych@umich.edu, and interested adults can email louisa4@michigan.gov, or connect with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights on Facebook at facebook.com/MIDCR, and Twitter @MICivilRights. And of course, stay tuned for future forums and events run by the Social Justice Fellows on our own Instagram page at MD Equity Fellows. And that should conclude the live stream portion today. So let's see. All right, I think our live has ended. Thank you. And I think now we're going to be moving into our breakout portion, but we might need a couple minutes here to get the breakout room set up. So for now, please feel free to turn your cameras back on since we're done presenting, and we will be going to the breakout room soon. But since we have some time, how about we have our fellows introduce themselves, just your name, your pronouns, and your school.
And maybe pause for just a second. Suniti, hi everyone, I'm Lindsay. I'm getting the breakout room set up, but Tony, I am the host, but breakout rooms aren't showing up